Alright, now comes the fun part.
First shot, you nailed it.
Right, okay, the dragon comment was probably a little bit fucking over the top, but at the end of the day, you're fucking boring.
And we are back here in the studio, and by studio I mean my own apartment. Never mind the fact that my hair has significantly grown in length, and I now look like Marty McFly. We're here now with our rifle. This is, as I've probably said for the millionth time in this video, a rifle number 4 Mark I, a Lee Enfield rifle number 4 Mark I, as officially designated by the British. When I was originally searching for rifles, I was searching for an SMLE Mark III. That stands for Small Magazine Lee Enfield, if I'm not mistaken, SMLE. But this is not an SMLE, even though it's pretty much identical to one in terms of how it works, its mechanisms and all that. It just looks different, it's a bit more refined. As far as I know, they work exactly the same. But for those of you who don't really know anything about Lee Enfields or guns at all, and trust me, I don't admit to knowing much about them either, but I can give you the small anecdotes. From my perspective, and I know gun enthusiasts are going to come at me and say that I'm way wrong, but SMLE is for World War I era, whereas the number 4s are World War II. Of course, there were developments between the SMLE and the number 4. By and large, that's kind of what I consider, and that's why you see the SMLE in a lot of World War I video games, but in World War II video games, it is a rifle number 4. Now, in terms of rifle number 4s, there are a couple different models. Number 4 Mark I stars, number 4 Mark IIs, Mark IIIs. I think there are Mark II and Mark III stars, quite possibly. I don't really know anything about the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs. The big thing I know the difference of is the difference between the number 1 and the number 1 star, and we'll get into that once we take a closer look at this rifle. Essentially, what this rifle was is it was the mainstay rifle of the British Army during World War II. I mean, your average American soldier was carrying around a Garand, your average German soldier a Kar 98K, your Russian a Mosin, and the British, and also Australians and other nations under the British Commonwealth, were carrying around a bunch of these. This rifle was pretty unique in that it was ahead of its time in a lot of ways, but also pretty generic in a lot of ways. It is what I would consider to be sort of the refining of an outdated concept. Yeah, by World War II, you have Garands, you have SMGs, you have self-loading rifles just kind of in general. I mean, sure, America is the first country to widely adopt self-loading rifle in the Garand, but self-loading rifles existed back in World War I. The self-loading rifle as a concept is not new. It existed for a very long time. It just was never really worth pursuing at the time. But needless to say, especially in the middle, towards the end of World War II, a bolt-action rifle was really starting to show its age, and countries around the world were realizing that you needed to update. Despite that, this was in British service for a very long time, and mostly throughout just the entirety of World War II. They were using bolt-action rifles. Now, the number one reason for this is, well, war. You don't really have much time to be developing new technology in the middle of a war, specifically right after Dunkirk. Britain had to make up for a huge deficit of these rifles, which were no longer readily available because they left them all behind. So we'll talk a little bit more about what they did to remediate that problem, but needless to say, when you leave a bunch of your guns behind and you have to quickly build more, you don't really care about modernizing to the next big thing. You just need more of what you have and what you know works. And by God, did the Enfield work. Now again, as I've said, I am not a gun nut. I'm not a gun enthusiast, and I know way less about firearms history than I do about tank history. But for my money, what little I've seen, this is probably the best a bolt-action rifle can get. It's got a smooth, very user-friendly and easy to operate bolt.
So it's a turn-down bolt handle that drops you right by the trigger. So much so that they're known for the Mad Minute, which there's a lot of talk of just sort of burning rounds. You don't want to sell the Lee Enfield just on the Mad Minute. I think that's a bit of a meme understanding of the gun versus the core competencies of this gun.
It's a very easy, simple rifle to maintain and clean from my personal experience, and it has a 10-round magazine, which is huge. Pretty much no other bolt-action rifle in main service of any military at the time, as far as I know, had a 10-round capacity. I mean, Kar 98K had 5. Even the M1 Garand only had 8.
It's like the biggest feature on this thing is that it has 10 rounds. 10 rounds means it must be king, right? More rounds is king.
Well, okay. If having a magazine capacity of 10 rounds makes it the best rifle of the war.
Snap. It's 2.5 times better.
25 rounds of 30-06. So this is obviously the number one pick. A lot of people will be like, but 10 rounds. And it's almost a non-factor.
Oh, brother. brother, this guy stinks!
I don't want to say anything concrete in this video, I just want to give you what I know. I'll leave a link to plenty of forgotten weapons and Jonathan Ferguson talks in the description below if you really want to know a lot more about the specific history of these rifles. But needless to say, for my money, and yes, I'm probably biased, I think the Lee Enfield, as far as bolt-action rifles go, is just the cream of the crop. So in order to get a better appreciation of that nailed-down technology, let's take a closer look at this rifle and how exactly it works, and what changes I've made to it, and what exact model of Lee Enfield I have.
Every single person who watches your videos are fucking stupid.
And we're here with the rifle, a much closer look at it on the table with a nice zoomed in appearance, and it is quite literally just here on my table, quite the bula. That's the stand that I had my camera set up on, by the way, so just to give you a sense of what kind of setup we're working with here. But I mean, hey, if it works, it works. So let's get into some of the mechanics of my rifle specifically, and there are quite a few things of note with this rifle. My rifle is, as Ian McCullum has so gracefully put it, the bottom of the barrel. Britain had to make up for a loss of a lot of these rifles after Dunkirk during World War II, and as a result, there were a lot of things that were simplified in production to make these rifles easier and cheaper to produce. As such, even though you can find plenty of rifles that are all No. 4 Mark 1s, not all of them are going to be the same. In fact, many you'll find quite a few differences. Each iteration that it kind of went through went down the line of cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, crappier and crappier and crappier, until you get to what I have, which is the cheapest bottom of the barrel that they could possibly make it. First of all, starting from the butt, we have the cocking piece right here. But originally on early war models of this rifle, it was a circular piece that you could, grab onto. And basically the idea of this is that you can cock the rifle manually with your hands. There we go. Half cock and then full cock. So the rifle is cocked and primed to fire. This was found to be a little bit too expensive, bottleneck in production. Pieces were also had knurling on them, which is like this little, basically ribbed engraving pattern on them. I'll put up a picture and you can see what I mean. Again, too expensive, too much effort, not worth it. So they simplified it to this little rectangular square prism cocking piece. Moving forward a little bit, I've actually lied to some of you. Actually, I've lied to all of you. Right here is a modification that I have made to this rifle. And this sight, when compared to the rest of my rifle, is actually anachronistic. This is the original early war variant of the sight. This is the original sight. It is a, what I see on the internet is referred to as a micrometer battle sight, which is a pretty badass name if you ask me. But it's literally just your standard iron sight, and it can flip up to be a ranged aperture, and you can twist the knob up top and you can increase the range, decrease the range. Ranged, it goes all the way up to 2,000 meters, which is ambitious, I'll give them that. Now I mentioned that this is anachronistic. Well, I have a bottom of the barrel rifle. This sight was not put on bottom of the barrel rifles. These rifles in their bottom of the barrel configuration actually would have come with this, a extremely simplified version of a sight. You can imagine it sits right here where this one does, and you just flip up between these two sights rather than this whole block with its ranged aperture and everything. There we are. This sight right here is a very, very simple little L piece, and you've got your 300 meters and your 600 meters. But me being me, when I discovered that this was the original version of these sights, I was able to find one on eBay, and I scooped it up, and for Christmas I actually installed this. And of course I kept the old one, I kept the original just in case, but when I bought this rifle, this was the sight that it came with. So this is the historically accurate bottom of the barrel sight. Now there's another change in this area that they made to simplify production, but that actually leads us into a separate variant of the Lee Enfield of the No. 4 Mark 1. So we're going to kind of skip that, and we're going to move ahead to the front here, particularly the barrel. These rifles originally came with barrels that had 5 grooves cut in them. They're five cutouts that spiraled down the barrel to create the rifling for it. This was also found to be a bottleneck in production, or at the very least they wanted to see if they could simplify it, if they could make it cheaper. They did some testing, and the British found that they could actually get away with 2 grooves, and they found that there was no significant decrease in accuracy between that and a 5 groove barrel. So as part of the simplification programs, they changed out the barrels to only have 2 grooves kind of cut out in the spiral for the rifling of these rifles. And I will admit, I have looked down the barrel of this weapon while the bolt is out in completely safe conditions and under supervision, I promise, to see if this is true, and also for cleaning and stuff. And yes, my rifle only has 2 grooves cut out in the barrel. But I mentioned that there was one other piece of this rifle that makes it an early war production variant. Or, well, rather, a piece that is of significance right here. For those of you who know your Lee Enfields, you know what I'm about to be talking about here, but this little tab is how you take the bolt out of this rifle. For servicing, for cleaning, for safety, for whatever reason, if you need to take the bolt out of this rifle, this is how you do it. So to take the bolt out of this rifle, you can see we have our bolt right here, and we have the bolt head right here. It's got a little groove cut out on the edge here, and that groove slips in to place along this rail. To get this off of this rail, that's what this lever is for. So if you want to take the bolt out, pull it up, that rotates the whole thing. Although, as you can see, the bolt head stays where it is, and you rotate the rest of the bolt. You pull it forward along the rail, so you'll notice the head stays along the bolt rail. You pull it out to here, where you see it's a very perfect fit, except, I kind of screwed that up. You're supposed to get this tab, and with one hand, it's a bit of a three-handed job. I have to grab it with my other hand. You push this tab down, and then pull the bolt back, and then when you release the tab pushes the bolt head up a little bit. Flip this up so it's a bit better to see. And then you can go ahead and just take your finger and push it all the way up. You can slide it out the back of your gun. And there we have the bolt of our Lee Enfield No.4. This little tab was seen as a bottleneck in production. It was just kind of too much effort. And as a result, you got the Lee Enfield No.4 Mk. Star. The No.4 Mk. Star does not have this little tab. Instead, they quite simply just cut out a groove on the rail, I think right about here, maybe, give or take, where you can slide the bolt back, and when the bolt is in a very specific, perfect position, it is perfectly off the rail, and then you can just push the bolt head up and slide it out. I think, again, I could be wrong, but I think this was still the preferred method. I have no idea if they switched back to this afterwards. I think they did. I think the No.1 Star was just purely for the economical reasons, but, you know, towards 1944 and 45, when things were looking better for Britain, you know, a lot of the newer rifles were manufactured back to their original early war specifications, and I think this was brought back, because I think this was just the preferred way of doing it. While I have the rifle kind of gutted like this, I really quick want to do just a little bit of Forgotten Weapons style, talking about how this rifle works, because I'm very fascinated about all of the intricate little mechanisms that go on in here that make this rifle work the way it does. And there's 2 major components to this: the trigger and the bolt, obviously. But let's show you how that works real quick. So firstly, you'll notice here in the bolt, the back of the bolt has these nice little grooves cut out into it, 1 and 2, here along the back. And you might notice that, obviously, this is our cocking piece. If you look, you can see that this cocking piece is connected here on the bottom, and it's kind of separate to the bolt itself. You can see it kind of floats. I mean, not really, but sort of. You know, this is a bit of a separate piece, and that's important. Inside the rifle itself, you can see right here, just above where the trigger is, you'll see that there is a little lever in here that every time I pull the trigger, that lever comes down. Right here, you can get a bit of a better look at that. You see that lever down there, and every time I pull the trigger, that lever comes down. This lever is designed to get caught on the grooves cut out in the bolt. We'll go ahead and slip the bolt back in. Go ahead and slip this back into position. Go ahead and drop the tab, push the bolt, slip it back onto the rail. We've got our grooves cut out in the bottom, like I mentioned. And if you think about our lever right here is kind of in the up position, and when you push this, there is a solid press. It doesn't want to go any further. With this, I can, you know, tap the bolt, tap it, but as soon as I get to a point, it's stuck. If you were to keep pushing, let's see if I can do this without blocking anything for you guys. If you were to keep pushing, you'll see that the bolt comes forward separately to our cocking piece. You know, this cocking piece with the grooves gets caught on that lever and stays caught, whereas the piece, if you keep pushing the bolt, slides forward separately. Push it in and down, and now you've primed the weapon to fire. It's ready to go. You've cocked it. You know, I showed you earlier the manual cocking of the rifle, but this is how you do it. This is how you cock the rifle, by racking the bolt. It's apparently a bit of a debate in the bolt-action rifle world that's, I think, still being waged to this day on whether or not the rifle should cock on open or on close. The idea is at some point you're going to have to exert a little bit extra effort to cock the weapon. On a lot of German rifles, that effort is exerted when you pull the handle up. For this rifle, it is very much a super simple, I mean, I can flip it with my finger and it flies up. But for a lot of rifles, the way to cock the weapon, to prime it to fire, is you have to exert that little extra force to pull the bolt up, a little extra effort to, yeah, and that primes the weapon. And then from that point, it's a super smooth motion to rack it. The Lee Enfield, in particular, is very different. The extra effort is needed is in closing the bolt back up. Where we're getting caught on the trigger lever, the only way to close it is to give it a lot of extra force. And I'm serious, that genuinely takes a good effort. The best way to do this thing is really to just treat her dirty. You just have to slam the bolt shut every time you're using it. And you'll see that on the test range, is sometimes we get caught at the very end where we'll, fire a shot, pull the bolt open, and then as we close it, we get caught at this very last segment here, and we have to really give it another good oomph to close it and lock it up again. Now, of course, knowing this also means that if you'd ever like to operate the bolt without accidentally priming the weapon, much like how with a pistol, you can kind of pull the trigger halfway and then let the hammer back up. I mean, on like a revolver or whatever. With this, it's very much a similar mechanism. If we think about the fact that the lever is there to catch on this and cock it, if we just pull the trigger, the lever is in the down position, so we can just slip this into place without accidentally cocking the rifle. One final piece that I'd want to show you while I have the rifle kind of in our examination mode is how the safety works. So the safety is this little lever right here on the side. This is your safety, so you pull it back for safe and you push it forward for ready to fire. What that's operating is this little catch right here, this little wedge right here inside of the, I guess, on the butt of the rifle. And what this is doing is also getting caught on one of these grooves. So it's that idea of, you can imagine that that little tab that we were just looking at is now in the up position, and as a result, I literally cannot operate this rifle. I cannot jerk the bolt, I can't flip it up, I genuinely can't do anything. I can still pull the trigger, because this does not interfere with the trigger lever that's up in here, but as far as operating the bolt goes, I can't do anything. Now, I can still... Oh no, actually, I don't think I can. I can't even manually cock the rifle. So it's a very, very simple, all these things are extremely simple mechanisms. If you really, it's all just levers and wedges that are getting caught in certain positions and preventing things from moving, but it all just kind of works. And of course, one thing I should mention while we have the bolt is that the way the weapon actually fires is that you have your firing pin up at the front on the bolt head, and you have your primer back here, and there's obviously under spring tension, and when you've got the weapon cocked and you pull the trigger to fire, that sends this cocking piece back, slamming into the back of the bolt, drives the firing pin forward, strikes the back of the cartridge, and the rifle goes off. We're going to showcase the shell ejection system on here because, again, I think it's really cool. So the way it obviously works is you'll have your bolt up and out. So you'd have your rounds in the magazine here. Now, dummy rounds, nothing in here, already fired. So normally, obviously, your rounds would be in the magazine. Bang, rifle goes bang, pull the bolt open. Top of the rim on the back of the shell actually catches on the bolt as it comes. But there you go, it catches and then bam, it gets slapped in there. And you can see here what's happened. The bolt has this piece on it designed specifically to catch on the back of the case. It's got this little hook on it. So you pull the trigger, gun goes bang, and then once you fired it, you lift the bolt up. That automatically, under spring tension, everything already does quite a bit of the work for you, literally just by lifting it. This automatically wants to just fly backwards. Now there's another outcropping right here. You see right here, this is straight, 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 and then right here, it curves again. And this curve is to encourage the shell to then eject. You'll notice now, the rim of the back of the case is getting encouraged to slide into this divot. And once it does that, it tilts it outwards. And when you're doing that in one fluid motion, the shell flies out. So, again, it's all very simple. It's just grooves and divots and hooks. It's all just very simple mechanisms that create such an effective little piece of kit. And of course, I also want to take this time to showcase what I was the most excited about, because I went above and beyond and bought for the rifle, not just the ammo, but obviously the stripper clips as well. I found these on eBay. You can get a hold of these. They're really not too terribly hard. Just Google Lee Enfield stripper clips. I got 5 of them, and honestly, I think I want to get 5 more because these things are just so badass, and I love being able to use them. Oops, I just dropped that one. So you're going to take your case, and you're just going to stick it in there. It sits in nice and firm. And then the way I personally do it is I then come in on the other side, and I use this one as sort of a stop for the rest. And then you push them in, and you go. And you want to make sure you kind of get them lined up from the start correctly. And there you go. Now, I haven't done a perfect job because as you can see, this one is straight across and this one is angling upwards a little bit. The ideal way is you want it to kind of create a pyramid inwards, whereas this is obviously quite lopsided. But there's a very specific technique to doing that I don't know. And quite frankly, I don't really care. But this suits its purposes. And this is sturdy too. Like, this is a good, like, you can give this some punishment and these will stay here. This is a very sturdy piece of kit. You can definitely slip these into pouches or into pockets and carry these around, and you can totally use this as like your round storage. And you get to do what is, in my opinion, quite possibly the most satisfying thing to do with this rifle, period. So you'll notice there is a cutout right here at the top on the bridge of the receiver. It fits perfectly with the stripper clips. So you'll notice the stripper clips have these little bumps in them, and that is so that you flip this in. So they'll sit there, and again, they're ambidextrous, so they'll go in either way. You can fit them however you so desire. And then what you do is you take I personally like to grip the rifle under the mag like this, and you take your thumb and you do what is, again, in my opinion, the most satisfying thing to do in the whole fucking world. Push them in. That never gets old. That is just such a satisfying, just pushing those rounds in and getting your thumb deep in the mag and pushing. You can feel the spring of the mag pushing in under your thumb and locking them in there. You hear that click, that that nice fit in there. It's amazing. One other upgrade that I've made to this rifle that a lot of you who know your Enfields have probably noticed is the sling. This is not a Lee Enfield sling. This is actually an American M1907 sling. I think this was used on Garen's, but I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I got this sling because I like the leather. I think the color matched up with the rifle a bit better. I actually got this for Christmas as a surprise from my parents because it was on my Christmas list. But before I bought this from my parents, I actually got the original Lee Enfield style sling. So with that, I think the last thing to talk about really with this, the identification, the markings. The first and most obvious place to look would be the serial number, but as you can see, the serial number has been, or at least the original one, have filed off the original markings. You can find also pictures of historical Lee Enfields, and they have all sorts of crowns and serial numbers and dates of manufacture and stuff stapled right here. This is always where they would put it, but mine is obviously severely missing. And you can even see, look right here, you can see the cutoff as to where the grinding down or sanding down or whatever they did ends right here. And you can see that they really did just take probably a grinder if I had to guess, and just ground off whatever was previously here and put a new serial number on here. And on the front here, a lot of rifles will have the manufacturer written right here. If it's an American-made rifle, it would have made in USA stamped right here in big bold letters. Usually there is something else written right here, but for me, it just says No. 4 Mark 1, and even then, it's actually quite worn out. Now right here on the top of the receiver is what is, in my opinion, the most mysterious and most interesting mark for me. It is a little crown, at least it looks like a crown, with the number 70 and the letter N. I have no clue exactly what this crown symbolizes or what country or whatever this is the manufacturer of represents. I don't know what the number 70 means, and I don't know what N means. I have tried so hard to Google and to search and to find what this means, to no avail. No one on the Lee Enfield subreddit bothered to answer. If anyone knew, they didn't say anything, or if they knew, they didn't see it. But anyone out there, internet, I'm asking for your help. This is honestly the last mystery I really have on this gun. I don't know what this means, and I would like to figure out if this has any broader implications. Coming up here to the front of the rifle, we have the only real confirming mark that I've found on the gun so far, which is this S on the front here. This is the symbol of the manufacturer Savage, which was actually one of the only 2 companies in the United States to manufacture Lee Enfields. It was Savage and I think Long Branch, two companies in the United States that manufactured Lee Enfields for Britain for Lend-Lease. So this being a Savage is actually quite interesting. Then on the bottom, we have this mark D and M with a little arrow on the bottom. This little arrow can be seen quite a couple places on this rifle. This arrow is the mark for the kind of the British stamp of approval that it is officially in military service. So when a rifle has gone through the testing and said, yep, we're putting this in service, we're actually going to use this in our military, they give it this little stamp arrow. So this possibly implies that it saw actual use in the British military. And the initials D and M, I've tried looking them up. I've tried seeing what the hell they mean. I cannot connect D and M to any significant company or persons related to Lee Enfield and the manufacturer of Lee Enfields. So genuine, kind of stumped on that. And finally, the absolute biggest mystery on the whole gun is all of this writing and engraving here on the bottom of the rifle. So this is obviously right beneath this D and M, right here. There appears to be numbers written here and also something else. It looks like, I think right here is another one of those arrows pointing upwards. And then it looks like something was written across, but also something was written down. You can see the letter C here quite nicely. You can see kind of what looks like, I believe the number 7. You can see that's a 7. That's definitely a 2, so obviously serial number, and I have been able to find that one of the other places that they would typically put serial numbers on the Enfields was on the bottom here on the handguard. And so I have a couple of different theories actually. You can kind of see here marked, this looks like the letter C sideways with the number 3 and then I think 5072, 35072 I believe. Yeah, that might be a 5 and that could be a 3, 35072. So either way, this is 72, and that could be a 3 or a 5, and that is definitely 72, and that's probably a 3 and a 5. So I reckon this is the serial number, the actual original serial number written on the rifle twice, once long ways and once sideways. We see the letter C here, and we also see the letter C here. Now I think this was also a thing where they had the letter C, and this, I originally thought this right here was a W, because it kind of looks like a W, but I think this is actually another letter 3. So I think the serial number C3 be written down this way, vertically, and then they scratched over it, and then did it horizontally, and then scratched over that, and did it vertically again? I'm not sure, but it seems like we have the serial number written on this thing multiple times. And you may wonder, well, why the letter C? Well, I have been able to find that the letter C was put in front of the serial number of Lee Enfields that were manufactured by Savage. So this is a second piece of evidence that this rifle may have been manufactured by Savage, i.e. the American company. If this is true, this has major implications. However, I highly doubt that they're real. Couple important pieces of note about Savage manufactured Lee Enfields. First of all, a vast majority of them, and I mean a vast majority, they manufactured, I think, over a million, they manufactured a lot of these rifles, and only a tiny fraction were No. 4 Mark Is. A vast majority of Savage and Long Branch American-produced Lee Enfields were Mark I stars. So having an American-made No. 1, not a No. 1 star, is actually pretty rare from what I've heard. So you might think, oh wow, I have an American-made No. 4 Mark I, holy shit, this is amazing, I have a collector's item. I don't think so. Number 1, I bought this Milsurp, so Lord knows what kind of parts on this have been changed out, thrown away, put new ones on, replaced with other random parts they found on eBay. I mean, hell, if somebody bought this rifle off me today, they already have one piece of the rifle that is not original because I've already tampered with it. First of all, the crown on the top here, that I don't think an American manufacturer would put a crown of any kind on their rifles. I think us as Americans moved away from that pretty quickly. But secondly, if you were paying attention to my lecture, you would have remembered that I said American-made Lee Enfields had a giant Made in USA stamped right here on the top of the receiver. I don't. I think this is an amalgamation of different parts from different manufacturers, but it is interesting to note, so whatever this crown means can probably tell me who the manufacturer of the receiver is, but the manufacturer of the stock could very well be Savage. So this could be the amalgamation of two different rifles, a Savage stock and then possibly a new receiver. So maybe this was at one point a Savage No.4 Mark I Star, and then maybe somebody ripped out the receiver and put in a regular No.4 Mark I receiver in order to maybe do some kind of conversion. I don't know. I'm genuinely curious. What I want to know is what the hell this crown means, because the receiver has no other identifiable marks. The crown is the only thing that tells me who this receiver may have been, who may have manufactured this receiver. So at the very least, I can find out what 2 people had a hand in the manufacture of this rifle. But also, it's milsurp, so again, it could have been chopped up, diced up, reassembled at any point in its life multiple times. And, you know, we may never truly know its full actual history, but at the very least, I'd like to know as much as I can about it. So internet, I'm employing your help. All right then. Well, we're finally here. You made it all the way to the end. Congratulations. Pardon once again the hair growth and the significant change in everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would just like to keep this short and sweet because this video has been split into 2 parts, and the second part is already half an hour, so I'm gonna keep this quick. But I just want to say that this video series, this 2-part thing, has taken me a very, very long time to make, to film, to cut together. I'm not sure why. This video series was just kind of taking up a lot of time, so I'm glad to finally have it done. And that's also why you might see that a lot of this stuff seems very rushed, and that there are pieces and segments that seem cut together, recorded at different times. That's because a lot of this was, like, this whole video has been like 3 months in the making, which is very abnormal for me, but I'm glad to finally have it done. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you guys found my beautiful little Lee Enfield cool, because I like it a lot very much. I hope you found this experience informative and educational, as per always. As I said, I'll leave plenty of links down below to Forgotten Weapons, Jonathan Ferguson, any other people who are more qualified to talk about guns than I am, down in the video description, so you can check all that out for yourself. But otherwise, this has been my experience with my rifle, Lee Enfield No.4 Mark I. There will be content with this rifle in the future. I definitely have things planned for it, but in the meantime, it's going to sit on my wall and look pretty for my live streams. For those of you who may or may not know, I should really start advertising this at the beginning of my videos, but I live stream, usually on weekends. I try to do it once a week, but I'm looking at trying to do it more often. I stream pretty much whatever I want, whereas this YouTube channel is mostly about history, tanks. We've dove into gun territory officially now, but that is very much focused on tanks, military history, that kind of thing. My live stream channel is anything and everything. I'm currently doing a Metro 2033 playthrough over there. I'm concentrating. Chat, concentrate with me. Chat, are you concentrating? Clearly not. I have to do everything myself. Oh. Ah! Oh, fuck! That was not cool. What the fuck, Con? What? Bruh. What the actual dick bags? I've been playing Five Nights at Freddy's on a bet with Nomad Prod. I don't hear him. How long this stream could be? Let's find out. Wafers. I'm gaming. I'm gaming. Alright, boys. It's time to game. And that's going to be an ongoing thing. Subscribe to the live channel and you can see when I'm going live. Follow the podcast. We can do the podcast with Nomad Prod. Check that out. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
No, okay, no. I'm rephrasing. You can have one superpower, but the other guy, one of the other guys, has to choose a secondary effect.
I see this on Reddit. I see this
Yes.
all the fucking time.
But
You
it's
pick a
too
superpower, and then the guy replies and says anal cancer. And you're like, well, fuck, you know. Now I can go invisible, but now I have anal cancer. Like, damn. Was it worth it? Fuck, I guess so.
Alright, I choose ass cancer for you.
I choose anal cancer for Felix. Secondary.
I choose boner cancer. Every time you get a boner, you get a cancer.
So that's what that thing at the tip is.
Boner cancer. That is the fucking funniest thing. and join the Discord if you're not already. Once again, I've probably already left links to all this stuff at the beginning of the video, but I don't really have much else of an outro for this. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Appreciate it. Yeah. I have upstairs neighbors. That could really hurt somebody with that. Fucking hair. Shit. Whew, God. I'm glad to get this off the assembly line. Fuck.